Hey everybody, Docwell here, and before I start the video, I'm just going to say, you guys need to thank me for making this video because everyone was probably like, I think, oh, the Dream League 20 billion or whatever just ended, new patch, and that was not going to happen, like at all, because the C patch or whatever it was only came out like 2 weeks ago. They were not going to drop a patch, but now that I'm making tier lists, they're 100 billion% dropping a patch. So you should thank me because that's the reason. They're going to see this tier list come up on Monday, and they're just going to be like, yep, got to drop the patch now. And that's literally the reason why. So you should be thanking me. Everyone thank me in the comments. Give me a billion likes and a billion views on the video. Thank you. And anyway, now we're just going to get into the tier list. This is the tier list for the carry for the patch, which is the 7.35C. And we're just jumping into the S tier, and there's only one hero, and that's Faceless Void. And that's basically because this hero is just ridiculous right now. It's just the best hero. It's been the best hero for a long time. It's kind of funny, though, because, I saw a lot of, there was Void picked, but I saw a lot of, Morph and a lot of, Sven and a lot of these other heroes picked in the Dream League, pro tournament. But this hero, yeah, it was popular and stuff, and people were picking it a lot. But I think maybe it was just getting banned all the time, too. But this hero in pubs is just absolutely ridiculous right now. It just does everything you want. Honestly, I feel like the biggest problem, and this has kind of been the case for a long time because I think this hero's been good for a long time, is that this spell just does so much in the laning stage and just in general. So many heroes now have a ton of spells they cast. All the passives have secondary effects that you cast these days. I feel like they're just changing all of that kind of stuff, and now this spell is just insane. It does a ton of damage, and it just is super annoying for spellcasting heroes, which every hero, like I said, seems to be a spellcasting hero. And then you just are so good in the late game, because I feel like this patch and just in general over the last year or so, they've made it so that Dota is not just ending very quickly, because there's double glyph, you go push high ground, you glyph, then tier 3 falls, you glyph. There's just so many different things. The map is so big, you're going to get your farm. The point being is that this is the ultimate late game hero. You just have two chronos late game. You have your ags, which makes it so that you don't even need to chrono to do insane damage because you jump in and out. You have, right, this is backtrack, I think, right? 20% backtrack, level 25. This is just the ultimate late game hero, and you're going to get there half the time anyway. The weakness of the hero is that you have to buy two farming items. A lot of times, people will buy Midas Maelstrom or Mask of Madness Maelstrom. So you're buying those things early, and that's kind of the weakness, because if you buy two farming items and the one silences you, it's not going to be as strong early, and if you press silence at the wrong time, you can die, that kind of stuff. But that just doesn't matter these days when you can just, even if you have a bad laning stage, with this hero's laning stage is pretty good, you just go back to the jungle, you farm, you're going to get 5-6 items. This is just going to happen in your games. So this hero is just insane right now, and that's why he's S tier all alone. I think he just deserves to be up there at the top. And again, actually, I kind of forgot to say this in the beginning because I was doing my intro in another way. I'll say this at the beginning of all of my other lists, but this is not a pro level tier list. This is a pub tier list. So I think it's whatever, a 4K, whatever, MMR, just middle of the road MMR. I'm just trying to be okay, I'm going to base it on what's good right now in this patch, but I'm going to think about what is actually good for most people watching, not just what is the best at the pro level, because that doesn't really matter, because the meta is a little bit different at the lower MMRs, and what's good is a little bit different at lower MMRs. So anyway, that's what I'm considering here a little bit. I'm obviously still looking at stats and stuff, but I'm just trying to base it more on pubs, because that's kind of what my channel's geared towards. So anyway, without going too deep into that and delaying more, let's just go after the S tier. Void is the solo hero up there. We're gonna go to A tier. We still have Slark, actually, and I think people, some people might put him S tier, but I just don't think he is as good as he used to be, just because they have nerfed him a few times now. There's just, over the course of the last year, they've made the shard worse. They made, I think, the pounce cooldown worse. They've just made all these little things worse, and he's just getting worse and worse and worse, little by little. The problem is, it's just one of the big things with him is just the item builds change and get better. So, he was maybe getting a little worse, but then they added in the Diffusal upgrade, the Disperser or whatever, which made this hero really good. It made a bunch of different heroes good. This hero loves buying Diffusal. Now, Echo Saber's not as good anymore, but it doesn't matter. So now you're just going Diffusal straight up. You don't have to choose between either one, because Echo Saber's just not as good in general as an item. It's still okay, depending on the hero, but really, if you can get the Diffusal and that's what you're going to buy that item, because Disperser's just so good late game. that the item build up for this hero is so much better and so much simpler. And then Mage Slayer was really good for a while, so then you would actually buy that instead of going the Echo Saber. Now you just kind of skip that since that's been nerfed a little bit in the C patch, I think. So anyway, there's all these little things that this hero like loved, and then they're slowly getting nerfed, and so I think it's bringing it down a little bit, and so that's why I just don't think it's the best. It's still really, really good, especially at lower MMRs, and you can honestly stomp with it. So I think it's still, maybe it could be S tier, but I'm just putting it a tier below Faceless Void because it's just not quite as good, I think, as Faceless Void, but you could definitely put it up there. And then the next few heroes are all just like solid. Like this hero is pretty good right now. I just don't love like BKB heroes. You know, I don't love Jug or Lifestealer. I don't like have, you know, especially since they nerfed BKB, they nerfed Magic Immunity like a few patches ago, a couple years ago, a year ago or whatever. I think it was like actually a year ago when they changed the whole map and everything. This hero just doesn't feel as good, but now it's getting buffed and it is pretty good. The win rate says it's really good. I still don't love it for, you know, the lower MMR you go, I don't think it's as good because I don't love it like late game against like Faceless Void or, you know, PA. I don't love this hero against those kinds of heroes, you know, because I just don't think it's as dynamic. But at the same time, it also has the other effect where people don't really know how to deal with it, you know, in lower MMRs. Like the lower MMR you go, the less people know how to deal with this hero because it just feels like, oh, the lifesteal is hitting me, I can't run away, and then you just like infest the creep and it's like, what? And the laning stage is also really, really strong. That's another thing too. So I mean, this hero is just definitely good right now. And that's why I put it in A tier, but I actually don't have too much experience playing it recently. Like you see, I've played this hero a good bit, but just not in the last like a couple years. I feel like it's not been good for a long time, so it's finally getting better. And then Sven's up here. I think Sven's really good. Obviously, it's getting picked a lot in pros, but I hesitate to suggest that you pick it a ton. I'm just obviously going to put it up here because it deserves to be up here, but I will say this hero feels like it falls off a little bit later. It's just how the hero has always felt and gets kited a lot, which means that, you know, in the lower MMRs, that can be a problem when your team just doesn't play very coordinated. And so whenever you're picking a hero that gets kited and kind of can fall off, now I think the fall off thing is actually not as true as it used to be. It actually is pretty good late game these days. I mean, you've seen it in some of these pro games where this hero just does like 2 shots carries late game. So I think it's actually still pretty good. But I just will say, if you combine that with the ability to be kited around and you still, I mean, yes, you have Ags and Shard and all these different things, but it still just can sometimes not feel as good because the thing that makes Sven good is that he farms quicker than any other hero in the game, basically. And so by like 20, 25 minutes, you're like 3 or 4 items, you know, you're almost like 6 slotted with like small items. And at lower MMRs, you just can't take advantage of that as well because your team's just AFK and that's just what happens. So that's why I would be scared a little bit to pick this hero as much if you're lower MMRs, but it still can be very good. And the thing that makes it really good now is that it is scaling into late game a little bit better. So anyway, that's Sven. And then PA is just, I think it's just good right now. It's mainly up here because I think in probably above 5K, this hero is like maybe C tier, but I just think it's broken anywhere below 5K basically. Like if you pick this hero, because everything's going late game, kind of like Faceless Void, this hero can just 1v5. Like it can just straight up 1v5 unless there's like a Viper on the enemy team and the Viper just clicks R on you. I mean, that's like the only thing that can happen and that makes your game bad. If Viper's not in the game or something like that's not in the game, it clicks R and just like breaks you, I think you just win. Like if it goes 30 plus minutes, you literally just win the game. There's just nothing that anybody can do, and games are not going to end before 30 minutes. Like they're just never going to end unless someone's griefing or giving up. So that's why I think this hero's up here. And then Ursa honestly is like not a worse version, but just like a slightly different version of, you know, PA or Sven and some of these other heroes. The biggest problem with this hero is that you don't hit buildings, but people have kind of done different builds. You know, you could go Octarine, some of these other things, and you still buy Battle Fury. It's still very, very good. And the thing that you're going to do, you know, in normal MMRs is just like snowball the game. You're just going to, you press R, you press Q, you can't die. People don't know how to deal with that. Just they don't know how to deal with that. You also do insane burst damage, and the cooldowns are so low. People straight up just feed to you all the time. In lane, in mid game, once you get a blink dagger, you just blink on people and they just die, and that's just what happens. You just have to be careful. Number one thing to be careful about with Ursa, and I love Ursa, is that you don't throw high ground, like I said, because you can't hit high ground. Hopefully you have somebody else to hit high ground with you, or hopefully you already killed people out on the map and then you go high ground when they're already dead. You don't really love going high ground when they are set up to defend. So just keep that in mind. And then Arc Warden, if you know how to play this hero and you're good at it, you can just dominate. Now, I think they have nerfed it recently, so I think it's kind of falling off, but I still have seen enough of this hero just absolutely own games that I still think it's pretty good. Now, maybe over the next few months, over the next patches or whatever, we'll see it fall off completely. I don't really know. I know, like, I think in the B patch it was, like, broken, and I know they did nerf it pretty good, but I don't know how that, I don't know how significant that one nerf was, because this hero is, yes, it does magic damage and stuff, but it is, like, a right clicker in a lot of ways, especially it's just like a late game hero, like I said, with, like, Faceless Void and PA. So that is the A tier. All these heroes are pretty good. I mean, yes, Faceless Void is better than I think the rest of them, but they're all definitely pickable and very good. And then we have B tier. Not much to say about Monkey King. I think he's just standard, average, middle of the road. He farms decently. He's decent late game. He has a good laning stage. Like, he does everything well, I think. He just has a little bit of a skill ceiling where you have to be good at, dodging, evading, jumping on trees. There's certain things he has to do. He's not as straightforward, and so he can be a little bit difficult to play at times, but it's not like crazy difficult. Just he has some skill involved. Otherwise, he does everything pretty good, and so I think he's fairly reliable to pick. It's just, I think you do have to be aggressive in the laning stage because his laning stage is so good, and he does need to, like, get farming items, and that's kind of the weird thing. His item build is a little bit wonky. Like, do you farm as a carry? Do you build like Battle Fury? That's not really good. Maelstrom's probably pretty good, but then if you can get away with it and you can snowball and you can go for like Deso and some of these other like non-farming builds, but just straight up damage, then you can really own. I think it's just that which one do you do? Do you go for the farming build because then you're not getting as much damage, but it's going to be easier to get your items late game? Or if you can just snowball the game and you don't even need to go a farming item, then you just have all these items, all this gold anyway, and you're getting gold off kills, then you're probably going to 100% win the game. It's just that if you go for that risky play and then you don't get those kills, you aren't aggressive, your team sucks, and they're not playing around you, you can feed and you can die, and then you just have no farm and you do nothing. So that's why it's risky. And then Spectre is kind of the opposite of what I just said about the Monkey if you don't go the farming build. This hero is just like all about going late game and just pressing R off cooldown to kill people across the map. Now, he's just kind of like Zeus, and I think he's pretty good, especially at lower MMRs, where you're just going to get reliable laning stages, you're going to get reliable late games. The only problem with this hero, and the reason why I think it's not like completely busted, especially at like just regular MMRs, is that pressing R off cooldown definitely is something that you can only do if your team is, being aggressive, knowing what they're doing, ganking, that kind of stuff. If your team is just like 5-man AFK jungling, then the hero doesn't really do much. I mean, it can still be good. You can still ult in. You can still get ags and all that kind of stuff. It can still do what it has always done, and you're going to get items, which is good. It's just that if you're 5-man farming and the enemy's 5-man farming, this hero is not as much of a late game beast as it used to be. It's still good, but it's just not what it was. Like, the strength of the hero is pressing R off cooldown, getting farm, and being pretty like tanky and impossible to deal with. So if you're just like, if they have something else like a Faceless Void, and you two are just farming the jungle and nobody's doing anything, like, yes, he has Chrono, which is really good, and yes, you have your ult, which is really good, but you're probably going to be punished more because he's going to farm quicker and all that kind of stuff. So that's why you just have to be careful with that kind of hero. But if your team is aggressive, if they're picking aggressive heroes, hey, I mean, this hero is really good to pick. And then Weaver, I think, is good right now in this tier, and he's not like lower. I think for, high MMR pubs, he would probably be lower, but I put him actually up here because I think he's able to really stomp games. I think it was a few patches ago he got nerfed a little bit. A few patches ago he was very good. And I just think he's kind of like discount Slark in a way, where he's extremely mobile, hard to deal with, hard to catch. He's like the carry version of Puck. And if you know what you're doing with Weaver, you can just stomp games. Then Gyro's like middle of the road, like farming hero. He's like the Sven, like the PA, like an Ursa with Battle Fury. He's just not as good. But if you get those items and you go late game, you can stomp with them. And that's the same thing with Luna. I think Luna is almost just like an easier version of Gyro, but they're still kind of both in the same area because they really do rely on items, like getting ahead of everybody and farming super quickly, kind of like Sven does. It's just, I think Sven now, the reason why he's above these two heroes is that he just doesn't fall off as much as he used to, where these two can still fall off and be like, oh, weird, they didn't have any impact for some reason. Because yeah, there's just other heroes that don't farm as quickly that are just going to overtake you once the game goes later. So that's why these are only B tier. And then we're getting into like cheese picks. I just think PL is really good now as a cheese pick for most MMRs because he just has that extra invisibility that he can get now. It just, people don't buy dust, they don't buy sentries, it's so hard to deal with him. And then just like That's in the games where he's even countered. I mean, he has Ags, he has that invisibility, and in those games where, it's going to be a hard matchup game, so there's a Storm Spirit, there's a Lesh or something like that, you can still deal with it with these other things. And then in some other games, like 50% of games, you're just going to win because you're a PL and you get farm and the enemy just has no counter, like no way to deal with you. Because how you play this hero now is you poke from far with Ags and that kind of stuff. You just like never have to even commit your hero unless you really want to, unless you know the fight is secured. And so because of that, it's really good right now in most MMRs. I think higher MMRs, once people understand how to deal with it, once people are picking Lesh every game, because Lesh is a very good hero right now. Lesh is not picked that much at lower MMRs, but that's like the main counter to PL. So that's why like maybe it's D tier in Immortal, but because Lesh is mid. But, at 3K, when do you really see a Lesh mid? I mean, like, you never see that. And if you do, they probably are terrible, to be honest. So, like, just pick PL. Who cares? Then we have AM. AM is just the classic AM. Like, you farm for a million years and then you win. And I think it's very good at doing that now. It's just the same thing it's always done. It's just better at winning once you get to that point. Just probably not as good as PA or some of these other heroes, but you have the Ags build and that kind of stuff that you can just deal with more once it gets past 30 minutes. But this is just the epitome of, like, you're just doing nothing. I mean, you really, really are just doing nothing. It's been the same forever unless you mix up the build. And that's the problem with it being carry, though, because you can mix up the build if you go, like, off lane AM or mid AM or something weird. You could maybe just go straight up Diffusal Ags, and it could work. Because you're not relying on being a carry. But if you do that from the carry position, it just feels awkward. One, you're going to get flamed. You're going to get reported. Your behavior score is going to be like 4K. Then you're just never going to get in matches, and you're going to go to low priority. But other than that, you're also probably going to lose because it just doesn't feel good to do that kind of build from the carry position. Then we have Morph. Morph is, like, it just seems like it's always coming back into popularity. If you're good at Morph, you know how to play him, if you want to practice him, if he's your favorite hero, if you really like seeing how the pros stomp with him, just pick the hero, play like 100 games, 500 games with him, become a god with the hero, and then you'll climb MMR, because this hero is always broken at lower MMRs. It's just sometimes it's like Giga broken, and sometimes I think it's just middle tier to lower MMR. The hero is never below like C tier. It's just that it's all about how competent are you at the hero. And then we have the two illusion heroes right here. In addition to PL, I guess I could move PL over there, but these two heroes are kind of afterthoughts. I think PL is more, I don't know, I put them up here because I group PL almost here in terms of like what are they doing, like how you think about the hero. These guys are just like middle of the road average, whatever. Like if you want to play illusion heroes, play them. They kind of feel awkward sometimes at lower MMRs because they don't feel as effective. Like sometimes you can just like farm the whole game and farm the whole map and push in and stuff, and then it ends up being like, oh, I pressed meta and I tried to hit people and my team ran away, or like my team was idiots and they just all died and I couldn't. Now they're all dead and I can't do anything, and I'm still good, but like I'm still getting kited or whatever. It just sometimes can be hard. And the same thing with Naga. Like I took all the farm on the map, my team has no farm, but they're also not doing anything. So that's why they're just middle of the road. Like you can still play them, they're good, but they're not the best. Then we have C tier. Troll is apparently good. I don't believe it. I'm calling bullshit. That's not true. He can't be good. He's never good. Stop telling me Troll is good. Stop showing me the win rate on Dota 2 Pro Tracker that says this hero's good. He's not good. Stop it. No, but seriously, I'm not going to put this hero. I don't care. I know it's my opinion. Who cares my opinion? Like his win rate is what it is. But I'm not going to put this hero higher, and I'm not going to believe in this hero. I'm not going to say this hero is going to get picked at like majors like all the time. I mean, I think he's getting picked more, but he's not going to be like a mainstay best carry hero. He's not going to be up here until they change the alt. You can't just. I said it every time. I say it every time. You guys are probably like, shut up. I don't care. I've heard you say it a million times. If you can't control your hero, that's dumb. It doesn't work. Like nobody wants to do that. You just get kited. Like it's not good. It's just always going to be not good. Now they're doing slight things to fix it, but it's still just not that great. I don't see how it doesn't get you killed. And I think actually at lower MMRs, it's almost worse because you're going to press R and then you're, like I said, like with Terrorblade, your team just runs away. And now you're like running in, like hitting people. You're like, oh, I killed one guy and now I'm dead. So that's why I just don't like Troll. And then Jug is like a good middle of the road hero. I think you can actually buy like Battle Fury and Stomp a lot of games, like Battle Fury, Manta. Like you can just consistently win your lane, consistently get your farm, consistently like do Roche by yourself almost, and like really win games with this hero. But I think that kind of stops working maybe at around like Legend or so. So I think if you're just like a really low MMR player, you can definitely pick this hero because he does a little bit of everything. He does everything kind of well, just nothing great. But anything other than that, he just feels like he does nothing. Like if you're against pretty good players that are getting farm, he just doesn't do the same amount of damage as them, and it just doesn't feel good to play Jug against a lot of carry matchups. And then Medusa's fine. It's just the fact that Diffusal's just too good right now, and this hero obviously sucks against that. But if you're good against people that aren't buying Diffusal, I mean, this hero's pretty good. And also Diffusal's been nerfed, so it just kind of pushes this hero up a little bit. And it is a great late game hero. It's also a hero that can be really hard to deal with, but, you know, if you're against any of these good heroes, it's probably not going to be great. Then we have Wraith King. I think Wraith King's pretty good right now at lower MMRs, just because like really low MMRs, like the lower you go, the better this hero is, I think. But then the higher you go, the harder it is to play, especially from the carry position. But it can be strong. It's just that it has been nerfed kind of recently because it was really strong. It was like an offlaner, and it was like, I think it was almost more an offlaner, not even really played as a carry too much, like, I don't know, 6 months ago, whenever that was. And they've nerfed it since then, so it's kind of fallen off. But it's still definitely good, and you can definitely pick it. Muerta's fallen off, but I think it's almost better to just play this carry hero as like another position, but you know, you can still play it. It's just that there's a lot of heroes like Lesh, like Zeus, some of these heroes that just make this hero not feel as good. There's a lot more ways to deal with it since it was broken. Then Bristleback, again, another one that fell off. It kind of like was terrible. It feels like this hero was amazing or terrible. It's like D or S tier. And now it's kind of like gotten to the point where it's like hovering between D and C tier. I think I put it here mainly because at higher MMRs, it's probably D or even like F tier. But at lower MMRs, you can still do like similar builds where you're like unkillable, fountain farming people with your back to the fountain and stuff like that. You can still do those kinds of things. And so lower MMR you go, the less people are able to deal with this hero. And so it can still be pretty good from the carry position, especially if you have like, you know, carry offlane, carry mid. Like a lot of people are picking that still. So then you have like this tanky kind of offlane hero, but from the carry. And so that can still be pretty good. So just keep that in mind. And then Drow overall is pretty good right now. I think at higher MMRs almost I'd put it up to B tier, I think a little bit, but it just feels awkward. The shard is definitely better now than, well, I don't know about better than it was because it was like they kind of mixed up with the shard and the ags and that kind of stuff. But the shard is pretty good. I definitely think it improves this hero's like escape mechanics and ability to actually like hit people. And you can definitely own games, but it feels in the same way as Sniper. It feels like a better Sniper right now, but it just still feels like you can just straight up lose games. Your lane stage is very good, but I don't think that matters the lower MMR you go, honestly. Like, it's very good to win your lane, but losing your lane sometimes doesn't feel that bad. And also, if you, like, stomp your lane, at the end of the day, it's like, okay, well, whatever, because the enemy's just going to jungle. Everyone's jungling anyway, so what does that really do? And then you can obviously get jumped on. There's like a lot of ways to deal with jumping on heroes these days. Just like the more mobility. The reason why this hero and Sniper have gotten more mobility over the years is because everyone else has gotten more mobility. So it's easier to jump on them and to like counter what they're doing. And then we have Alk. Surprisingly, actually, and I don't know if this is because they changed how Alk works. Like they gave the Grievous Greed, they made it a passive, they gave him another ability. But this is like the first time I think Alk has become a hero that is like semi-viable. Like you can pick it, and it's not bad, but it's not like S tier. Because usually it feels like it's S, A tier, or F. Like it really feels like it's top or bottom. And right now it's right in the middle. And it just kind of depends on matchups. It depends on the game. You're good sometimes. You're not farming way better. Like sometimes you're not even farming more than a Sven, really. But you can farm better. It's like, what is your matchup? Like, are you farming a lot more than them? And then you can just like stomp early, snowball early? Or are you going late game because you're actually a decent late game hero now that you have another ability, and none of these, you're not, playing a PA. You're not playing some of these other people, these other heroes that are just going to destroy you and just melt you. And it feels like, no, once you get tanky, once you get damage, it's very hard to deal with you later. And so Alchemist can kind of be that middle of the road hero. Then Lone Druid can sometimes be a carry if you know how to play this hero. It has gotten nerfed. I think otherwise it was like A tier in like all positions, or all core positions at least. Until last patch, and got nerfed pretty hard. Now, it was just the laning stage and stuff, but I think it got nerfed enough that it's just not as good. And he was buying Disperser a lot, so that was nerfed as well. And then Meepo is a similar kind of story. Like, this hero, if you know how to play this hero, you can stomp for sure. And it was like Mega Meepo was ridiculous. It's hard to counter the dig, and that's still all the same. But the AoE disperser definitely is not, having that be the nerf. I actually am not 100% sure if it still works on all your Meepos. I actually don't know that, but still, you were buying disperser like, I don't know, very early on this hero, and so that nerf alone is not as good. And I think they've just nerfed this hero over time because it was like absolutely broken. Like, it got back to the point where if you were a good Meepo player, you knew what you were doing, you could just straight up 1v5 a game. So that's C tier. Last is D tier. These are semi-viable. I'd say Chaos Knight is still semi-viable. It's just so bad now. It was absolutely destroying games like 6 months ago, and I won like 10 games out of like 12 or something with this hero. It was ridiculous. But they nerfed the lifesteal so badly, and it didn't seem like they did. But with like when you just look at the numbers, but when you're actually trying to farm creeps and stuff, you literally just don't lifesteal at all. Like, you can't get back up to full, and even in team fights, you're not lifestealing at all. So it's almost like takes that whole part of the hero and just removes it from the game. Like, it doesn't seem like it should work like that. I don't know if it's like broken and the numbers aren't right, but it just feels so bad. Still semi-viable, but really not good. And then Ricky is just the things that Ricky does. It's like other heroes just do them way better, and then this hero's not farming. Like, you'd never buy farming items, but you're fighting. But like, you can fight on a lot of these other heroes anyway, so that's just like, what are you doing? It just doesn't feel good. And then this is not a carry hero right now. Like, I think it was decent as a carry hero back when it was really more carry from the offlane, and you could play this hero offlane, but you also had an offlaner that was like a carry, like a Wraith King, like, a few months ago, but that's kind of fallen off. We're back to like almost normal offlaners now, so this hero is not as good as a carry. This hero you can definitely pick as a carry. I just think, you fall off. You're just not nearly as good as some other heroes. It's very matchup dependent. And I just don't think lower MMRs, you're really going to be relying on this hero to carry games. And then Sniper, I just wouldn't play it as a carry. I'd play it as a mid. And so that's mainly why it's down here. It's just a worse version of Drow. I think if you're relying on this as your carry, again, just not great. I'd rather you do the same thing from mid, just better. Bloodseeker's very weird hero. It just feels like sometimes it's in the meta and sometimes it's almost like the new Alchemist, even though it doesn't do anything close to that. It's always just like feels like it's really good and broken and people are picking it a lot, or it's not picked ever. And I feel like it's more not picked ever. It's kind of one of these heroes, they keep changing the abilities, they change the ags, they change everything about it, and it just can never really find its niche. Is it an off lane? Is it a carry? What does it do? It's like been weird for 10 years, and I don't know what they're doing with it. TA, I don't know, kind of another hero that's a little bit weird because, like, is this a mid or is it a carry? It feels like both right now. Like, it kind of does more carry stuff. If you're playing it as a mid, it's carry from the mid, but it's just a little awkward, not as good as some other heroes, I think. There's just a lot of ways to deal with it now. SF, not good, and Wind Ranger, not good. I feel like they're both kind of similar things. They're like mids that you can play carry, and same thing with TA, and even like Sniper, that you can play them as a carry because they do carry stuff. They do right-click, but it's just, I feel very bad having either of these as a carry. I'd rather have a Lena, honestly. We could just edit and add Lena in here, to be honest, because, like, I would almost put Lena higher. I'd rather have a Lena carry up here. A Lena carry was like popular, whatever, a year ago, whenever it was, and it was pretty good back then. These two heroes have not been good since then, and I'd almost still rather have a Lena carry than I would either of these right now. They do right-click damage sometimes. It's very matchup dependent, but I'd rather just play Wind Ranger off lane or mid even, and I'd rather just not have a Shadow Fiend in my game, unless you're doing like right-click build, which is definitely a meme and it's just weird. Then finally, we have F tier. Now, I think Clinks is okay, but not as a carry. I don't know. I just don't like him as a carry. He feels all in, like kind of all or nothing. And I think the lower MMRs, if you are like 1, 2, maybe even 3K, you can stomp people with this hero, but that's just because the hero's broken and like where people don't know how to deal with it. He's just running around invis and just like picking people off solo with Orchid or whatever. That's not really, it doesn't count. You can do that like no matter what. You can do that from the 4 position. So yeah. Pudge, not a carry. Like, just don't play this hero as a carry. He's actually kind of a good hero right now, but not as a carry. Nature's Prophet, just literally just not a core, it feels like, anymore at all. This hero is not really a carry anymore. This is definitely not a carry. I don't even know why it's here. And this is not a carry. Honestly, I should probably just remove that. It's not a carry. Stop it. So I wish Tiny was a carry. I love Tiny carry. It's like so fun when this hero becomes a carry, but it just hasn't been a carry now for, I could almost remove it. It's just that it is a thing that's been a thing for 10 years or so, and it comes back sometimes. So we're just putting it here as potential, like, hey, will this come back in the future? So that is my carry tier list for patch 7.35c. And like I said before, thank me, because now a patch is definitely coming out because I released this. So just, please give me a pat on the back for that. I'm your savior here for Dota. I definitely force all these things to happen. I contacted Valve. I said, hey, drop in this tier list, make sure the patch comes out. But anyways, as always, guys, thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all of those kinds of things, and I'll see you in the next video.